Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the Postnatal Depletion and the 4 Pillars of Health webinar series presented by MOMinar Fitness. My name is Alexandra Sampson, and I am the owner of MOMinar Fitness, and we are delighted that you are joining us for session 5 of 5. So we are at the end of our fantastic webinar series. Just to quickly tell you a brief info about MOMinar Fitness. We are a fitness company that celebrates women wearing dual hats as mothers and careerists, and are devoted to addressing the obstacles that working mothers and really all mothers face in trying to stay fit while they balance their family lives and their professional lives. And we do that through a number of different avenues, including fitness programming and fitness events, such as the webinar series that you're participating in. I just want to show here the photos of the amazing women that have been participating in this series. If you haven't had a chance, or if you've missed any of the prior sessions, I encourage you to access our YouTube page and take a look at the other recorded sessions that were held earlier in the series. And each of the women that are shown here have great practices that really help to address the various issues from the 4 pillars of health that we've been discussing. In today's session, session 5, is about nutrition. Again, we've been going through the 4 pillars of health, which are sleep, purpose, activity, and nutrition. And today we have the pleasure of hearing from Cheryl Harris. She is a registered dietitian and nutrition coach, and she's the owner of Harris Whole Health, based out of the Northern Virginia area. And she's gonna give us great information today on how to use food as nourishment and really to fuel our bodies as mothers. So at this time, I am gonna turn the program over to Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Alex, and I really appreciate you inviting me, and I'm really delighted to be here today. So I'm a dietitian, nutritionist, I'm a mindfulness and a health coach, and I'm also a lactation counselor. And I work with women who want to nourish themselves better with food so that they can feel their best, be a role model for their children, and in many cases, manage medical issues. I work with a lot of women who have autoimmune issues, often, the tummy troubles, and a range of other issues. And of course, I work with women who are healthy and feel good and just want to stay that way, stay healthy, stay feeling as well as they possibly can. And so I made my way into private practice in a roundabout kind of way. I used to run the breastfeeding programs for DC WIC, and that was very rewarding in a lot of ways. It was also a ton of work. And basically, as life would have it, so in my early 20s, I developed a bunch of autoimmune issues and GI disorders. And basically what I learned really early on is that if I didn't nourish myself, if I didn't learn how to take care of myself, I really wasn't going to be able to work or pretty much do anything that I wanted to do. So as a rule, nutritionists are people who like nourishing people. They're people who love feeding people. And it's easy for us to fall off that list. And that was really what was happening with me. And that's really something I see in pretty much all of the moms I work with, that it's hard keeping yourself on your own priority list. So in a lot of ways, my medical journey has been a blessing in disguise, because it's forced me to practice what I preach and really look at balance and making all of it work. So before we get started about talking about nutritional depletion, we're going to take a mini pause here together. And we're just going to do that for 60 seconds. So, just 1 minute. And what I'd invite you to do is, turn off, let go of the cell phone, let go of the keyboard, put down your sandwich. If it's somewhere that's safe, allow your eyes to close. And just take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Breathing in, relaxing. Breathing out, allowing your shoulders to drop. Receiving. And releasing anything unnecessary with the out breath. Just getting centered here, now, just for these few seconds. Nothing to do, nowhere to go, nowhere to rush. And so that was our 60-second bell. It doesn't take a long time to be able to relax and recenter, but some of the time it seems like oxygen is one of the main nutrients that we're missing. So moving on along to our topic today of nutritional depletion, we're going to be touching a bit on some of the nutrients of concern. And then we're really also going to be looking at, okay, how to make it work, because some of the things we'll be talking about fall in the category of, yes, that's nice, but I'm really busy, don't have a lot of time, energy, effort. So my goal today is for you to have not only an awareness of things that may be important, but some tangible tools in order to how to make this work, make this doable in your life, ideally even starting today. So the first thing that I let people know about nutrition is that Mama Nature loves babies. So always there is concern, I didn't eat well enough during pregnancy, or I'm not eating well enough during nursing. Maybe this is bad for my baby. And a lot of it is that probably not so much. So no matter what, your nutrients preferentially go to the baby. So you may be depleted, but most of the time, if there's any nutritional stores, and usually there are, those nutrients go to the baby, but that means that mom tends to be pretty depleted, especially if there are a couple of pregnancies in pretty short order. And those often end up adding up over time. And so there's often, especially the things that we may not have enough of, a bit of limiting stores. And so we're going to talk first about fats. Now, all of you who are about my age, anyone who grew up, was alive in the 80s and 90s, remembers the Snackwell era, where everything needed to be fat-free this and fat-free that, and fat was public enemy number one. And the fortunate thing is nowadays, there's a lot of really good consensus that just really doesn't make any sense. That's just kind of goofy. So fats are really not good or bad. There are some fats that are really, really healthy for you, and there are some fats that are really, really not healthy for you. So the fats that are most beneficial and the fats that are really going to do the most benefit are omega-3 fatty acids. And so we can get those from a variety of different places. One is vegetarian sources, and these are the things like the flaxseed and the chia seed and the walnuts and the soy. Those things do have some omega-3 fatty acids. The main source, however, is fish. And it's knowing that most of the omega-3s in our body, they're really helpful in terms of postpartum depression, in terms of depression more broadly, in terms of your joints and your hair and your eyes and your skin and your nails. That's EPA and DHA, and that's coming from fish. So as you can see on the left side, there are some vegetarian sources of omega-3s, but not a lot of that converts over to the more active form that we find in fish. So for most people, getting omega-3s from fish is a really big necessity because they're essential fatty acids, and it's not just any fish. So a lot of times when I ask clients what kinds of fish they're eating, I'll hear things like tilapia or catfish is another one. And so those actually are really quite low in omega-3s. So tilapia has 30 times less omega-3s than, say, salmon or trout, or flounder or sole or sardines. So basically what you're wanting to get is fish in your diet, but the fish that are high in omega-3s and low in mercury. And that's, again, things like salmon, trout, flounder, sole, sardines are usually going to be among your best bets. And avoiding the fish that are high in mercury, especially when pregnant or breastfeeding. And those are the ones like shark or tilefish or swordfish, but even tuna is on that list. And if for whatever reason you absolutely hate fish, fish is a no-go, or you're allergic to fish, omega-3 supplements, the little capsules, can be an option too. But it's important to know that our bodies, it's kind of a no-brainer. Our bodies like things in nature's packaging. We absorb the omega-3s from fish a lot better than we do from, say, omega-3 supplements. So if you can, getting high high omega-3, low mercury fish in your diet on a regular basis, 2-3 times a week, can be one big part in terms of making up for nutritional deficiencies. And the other part is in terms of, especially if you're breastfeeding, the kinds and quality of fats you're eating go directly to nourishing your baby's brain. So that's obviously a big concern. On the flip side, we have the not very good fats, and these would be the trans fats. And I know that a lot of you heard in the news, it was about a month ago, the FDA finally made an announcement that they were banning trans fat, which is a huge and wonderful thing, but that is going to happen by 2018. So while that sounds really lovely, it's not going to happen for a couple of years. And recent surveys have found that 10% of the products on the shelf have omega-3s. 85% of them on the labels, it's not obvious, it's not labeled. So a lot of times people are getting omega-3s, not omega-3s, trans fats in their diet and not realizing it. And as you can see in the picture at the left, a lot of the things, and I just grab things randomly, that do have trans fats in them are things like cookies. Something like a third of the cookies on the shelf have trans fats in them. Even cookies that are supposed to be healthy cookies, like Fig Newtons. A lot of kinds of graham crackers and saltines, and most of the kinds of popcorn have trans fats. So it's knowing that many of the items that are often on the shelf, and especially marketed toward young kids, tend to really have a lot of trans fats. Trans fats are linked to depression, they're linked to aggression, they're linked to memory loss, heart issues. So pretty much anything bad you could imagine, trans fats are linked to, because they're fats that are processed to be in a very strict structure, which is great in terms of having a product be shelf stable, but those rigid fats are then rigid in your body, and then they cause all sorts of inflammation. And so on the next slide, I just gave as an example, this is Reese's Pieces, and I'm not picking only on this one, but it's knowing that, as you look, trans fats, it doesn't say anything. And then when you look at the label, the third ingredient is partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. And so a lot of times trans fats fly under the radar. They don't have to disclose them on the label as long as it's less than 0.5 gram, because they play the math game. So under 0.5, they could round down to 0. Mathematically equal to 0 is not the same as health-wise equal to 0. So they have a huge impact on your health, pretty much more than anything else you could possibly, there really isn't anything else really worse that you could do in terms of nutrition, and they're stored in your body. So not only do they affect your health or for, several months, certainly if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, that's going to be a big piece of that as well. So moving along to other nutrients, another big one is iron. As many of you know, iron deficiency anemia is super common during pregnancy, and often it's common after pregnancy, especially if you had a difficult or long labor, or if you had a bleed, a tear, things like that. So, the baby comes out, it's not like magically poof, the anemia is gone. Often there's a lot of blood loss in whatever kind of birth someone is having. And a lot of times people don't like the iron supplements because they're pretty darn constipating. So there are a lot of foods that are high in iron. On the left side, you have what's called heme iron, which is the ones from animal sources, and that's things like liver and chicken and beef and fish and things like that. The right source is the vegetarian sources. It's important. So you can get iron from vegetarian sources, but unlike what Popeye tells us, they're not very absorbable from, say, spinach. It's certainly better than nothing, but it's probably, if you're deficient, not enough to bump you back to normal. So a lot of times what ends up having to happen is, as we see on the next slide, seeing how to pair those high iron foods with, say, something with vitamin C. So maybe it's having lemon in your water when you're eating chicken, or maybe it's having tomatoes along with shrimp that you're having. So vitamin C obviously is high in citrus fruit. It's high in some veggies like, say, sweet potato. It's also high in others like, say, peppers or tomatoes, and many other fruits are high in vitamin C. If you have a high vitamin C food with something with iron in it, it's going to increase absorption for up to 3 times more. So that can certainly be significant. Same thing with cast iron cookware. I had a breastfeeding peer counselor that I worked with, and she was from Guinea, and she talked about in the village where she grew up in, they had a special pot for women who just gave birth, and that was a cast iron pot, knowing that when women used that pot to cook in, they would end up absorbing more of the iron and help them bounce back after pregnancy quicker. So certainly cast iron cookware can be one way of raising your iron. And if there are no other options, or if your iron is low enough, supplements are certainly an option as well. Another nutrient that tends to be low is vitamin D, and it often seems like vitamin D is hailed as like the miracle nutrient for everything because it pretty much is useful for everything. It actually is one of those things that actually does live up to the hype in terms of having a higher vitamin D level seems to be protective against many autoimmune diseases, especially like say MS, arthritis. It seems to lower the risk of cancer, certainly strengthens your bones, even helpful in terms of immune function. People with vitamin D were less likely to get the flu. And vitamin D is not just a vitamin, it's also a pre-hormone or a pro-hormone. So basically a lot of the hormones in our body are made out of vitamin D. So if we have low D, it really affects pretty much every single system in the body because it's used so widely. So yes, vitamin D is you can get from sunshine. A lot of us, are leaving really early in the morning, coming back really late at night, may not be seeing a whole lot of sunshine. Maybe in the summer a bit, but often during the year, especially the winter, not so much. And so oftentimes supplements are necessary to have vitamin D. And vitamin D is something I always recommend you ask your doctor about testing because it's something small that you can do that'll make a really big impact in terms of your health. And so protein, and this may seem like a kind of funny nutrient to be talking about, but one of the things that I find is I'll talk to moms, and most moms end up being really grab and go. So they grab a bagel and they walk out the door. They grab a granola bar on the way to picking their kids up at practice. They don't grab a chicken leg and head out the door. So most of the things people just sort of end up grabbing and going are higher carb foods. And oftentimes, especially when mom and her nutrition are pretty far down the list, she may not be getting enough protein throughout the day because protein is usually the things that you have to sit down with a knife and a fork, and that sometimes, you can't just grab a handful of beans. So often those are the things that may not happen as much in terms of, fish, chicken, turkey, so on and so forth. So really making sure you're getting enough protein is key because, it takes a lot of protein to build a baby. It takes a lot of pretty much all nutrients to birth a baby. It takes a lot of energy, for that growth and repair process. So having a bit higher protein diet past in the postpartum period certainly can be a plus. And also keeping protein on the radar and making sure that we're not just drifting towards carbs is really an important part of making sure you're getting the balance you need. Another thing along those lines, and I love this picture because this is from, I think it was last year's garden when it was in full bloom. All of us know that veggies and fruit are important. Pretty much anything you could imagine in terms of nutrients and antioxidants and phytochemicals and fiber are really, really high in vegetables and fruit. And pretty much as a general rule, same thing. Moms may grab chips when they're on the way somewhere, but not so much a handful of broccoli. So oftentimes moms aren't getting enough veggies and fruit in their diet, and often there's so much of a sense of an obstacle around time and prep and washing, and they go bad and not wanting stuff to go bad, and this child loves this one and this one won't eat that one, and husband won't eat this or that or whatever, and it becomes a real juggling match around getting enough veggies and fruit. So the first thing I would say on that front is knowing that, okay, first of all, really, really common. One of the things that ends up being really helpful for many people is either having the things that you'll eat raw, so like handful of carrots, okay, done. You don't really need to do anything. An apple on your way out the door, or a banana, something that's portable, but also really looking at frozen vegetables and fruit. So you can totally throw a frozen handful of blueberries in a smoothie and it makes absolutely no difference. Actually, the texture is probably a bit nicer. Spinach, once it's cooked down, you can't tell whether it was fresh or whether it was from the freezer. And most of the year, so maybe not right during the summer, but most of the year, frozen veggies are even healthier because most of the year we're getting stuff shipped in from Peru and Chile and all the places that I wish I could go visit that are nice and sunny. They're not, fresh picked, and they lose a lot of nutrients in their trek around the world. Whereas frozen is, okay, picked, half an hour later frozen, not going to lose a lot of nutrients. It's cheaper. It's going to wait around for you till you need it. So especially if veggies and some of the frozen fruit haven't been a habit, using frozen can be a nice way of starting to get, steamed broccoli on the table. And even some places like Wegmans and Trader Joe's now have the fun like fire roasted and balsamic glazed and whatever, so it isn't like just like, okay, steamed carrots. That's not very interesting. And so using that can certainly really help. And it also, in terms of making it work and making it doable, a lot of times farmers markets can be a great place to go with your kids, having them pick out a veggie or a fruit that maybe they haven't had before. And I've got a list where it says Northern Virginia resources in terms of local farmers markets, locally grown, local farms that you can go to. I also like the services like Relay or Washington's Green Grocer, where they, will deliver to your doorstep a box of fresh local vegetables and fruit, because then there can be the sense of, hey, what should we make this week in terms of making things different, and even mixing things up a little bit. There also are some meal prep services. Many of you are familiar with Blue Apron, actually, is another thing to sort of help along the way. But also ones like, say, Power Supply and some others that have reasonably nourishing, reasonably balanced, reasonably healthy meals, and that sometimes just can make life easier. Because I know when I'm out of town, my first step when I get back isn't going to be the grocery store. And so especially when you have weekends that are going to be really hectic, or there's travel, or there's something important, putting in a delivery somewhere so that your groceries appear on your shelf may make it much more easy, much more accessible to have a balanced meal on the table. One thing that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned at least briefly, I've got this cute little graphic here, if you can see, of Cookie Monster, which says, today me will live in the moment, in which case it's unpleasant, in which case me will eat a cookie. Most people, emotional eating is a part of nutrition, or a piece of the puzzle, a part in the mix. Most people, when they're stressed, do not grab for broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, and turnips. They're grabbing the quick, easy, carby, comfort kinds of foods. And so, having enough time for you, even if that's taking 60-second pauses 3 times through the day, or being able to do something that's really, go for a walk, being able to connect with your partner, being able to connect with yourself in terms of a hobby, spirituality, just even briefly, makes a huge difference in terms of food. Because oftentimes whatever stress is going on in our life ends up coming out in terms of food, and usually in a way that's not so healthy. So that's a whole nother topic in and of itself in terms of emotional eating, comfort eating, but certainly it's got to be a part in terms of making sure you're getting balance. And the last thing I wanted to mention, and I'd absolutely love this picture, is the whole monkey see, monkey do idea. It is really, really, really rare that I see mamas where one of their key motivators isn't having their child be healthy. For most moms, one of the biggest pulls, one of the biggest pushes is, I want to be healthy for my child. I want to be healthy so that I can be a good role model. I want to be healthy so that they have a good template. And it's knowing a nice way of looking at it that can sometimes help shift our perception, is knowing that obviously our children learn much more from what they see than what we say. If you're doing something and it would really pain you to see your child do it, so whether that's skipping meals or not really eating dinner and taking care of everyone else's needs and, just sort of eating, hovering over the sink, if seeing your daughter or son do that would be, as a grown-up, would be upsetting to you, then ideally it's a behavior that you want to look at shifting over time. Because really how children learn how to relate to themselves is by seeing how mom and dad relate to themselves. So in brief, I know we've at least gotten a chance to touch on a variety of different pieces. Like anything else, hopefully there are one or two concrete things that you can start on doing. So whether it's adding in a bit more fruits and vegetables, looking at labels for trans fats, trying to add in high omega-3 fish more often. When I said the mini meals, often when we think about snacks, the kind of foods we grab are the higher carby the carby foods versus the foods that have proteins, omega-3, so on and so forth. So thinking about mini meals that are going to be more nourishing typically than snack foods. Any kind of shortcut you can take is certainly good stuff. People have this really interesting idea that everyone else has these gourmet meals laid out and this beautiful thing because you've seen it on your friends' post on Facebook or Instagram or whatever else. And as sure as many of you know, Facebook and Instagram are people's highlight reels. That's not what most people are having for dinner, typically most nights. And even if they are, hey, it's about getting life done in the way that works for you. And last but not least, as we mentioned, finding non-food ways to treat and nourish yourself is key, not only for your own health, but in terms of giving your children a template of what it's like to have a parent who takes good care of themselves. So I know we're at 1 o'clock now. Oh, and just, this is me. I'm in Fairfax and I'm in Alexandria, and you can find me on Facebook and Twitter. Certainly feel free to drop me a line if there are questions from the presentation, but also if we have a minute, we can take a few questions now if there is time. Where are we on time, Alex?
Thanks, Cheryl. So we are at time, but we do have time for one question. We have a question that came in.
Sure.
So I think we'll do that and then we'll wrap up. But certainly if there are other questions, I'll display another slide that will show how you can send those questions to us, and you can email them to info@mommytrackfitness.com, and we will forward your question along to Cheryl. But the one question that we had that came in prior to today's session actually relates to meal planning. And I know you mentioned, Cheryl, about meal prep services being an option, but the question is, what are some quick tips for getting healthy meals on the table quickly?
And so a lot of times, and I definitely hear you, when you come home and the kids are hungry and you're starving, it's really, I mean, just from a biochemical blood sugar basis, we don't have the time to really think. We don't make the best options when think about the best options when we're hungry. So to the extent that you can plan out meals before you leave, so that when when you come home, either, okay, you come home and you already have, let's say, an apple and some almonds in a little container waiting for you, or a tray of veggies for the kids with dip or whatever else, so that you can take, you walk in the door, you take that, you put it on the kitchen table, so that you don't have to have this long lag time where it's, what should we eat? Okay, the chips are just easy, or the cookies are just easy. So having something, a snack when you first come in, that's easily grabbable and accessible. I really like Aviva Goldfarb's book, The 6 O'Clock Scramble, which is basically that in terms of, hey, what are quick and easy meals or quick or easy meal prep ideas? Also, frozen veggies, really, really easy to heat up. I encourage people to have a couple of meals that are more assembly than meals. So it's perfectly legit to have a smoothie with, Greek yogurt, berries, and maybe even a handful of spinach, and that being, dinner once a week, or having eggs with a handful of veggies thrown in. Eggs for dinner is perfectly easy and quick, and is going to give you, some protein, some veggies, so more of the balance in the mix. So having a couple really, really, really simple options for those days when you're going to come home late can really be sanity saving. And so if there are other questions, definitely email us and we'll answer those as well.
Certainly. Well, thank you so much, Cheryl. And we've really enjoyed the presentation. I know certainly I've taken away a number of tips that I'm going to incorporate as far as my diet and meal planning goes. And this actually brings us to the end of our month-long Postnatal Depletion and the 4 Pillars of Health webinar series. I again want to thank all of our speakers and presenters for making this an outstanding series. And I want to thank all of the attendees and participants out there for joining us. And certainly, again, if you've missed any of the sessions or you want to revisit any of the sessions to think back on some of the tips, feel free to access our YouTube page, and you can find all the recordings there. And feel free to share either presentation and the sessions with a friend. Certainly self-care for moms is an important topic. It's one that we should continue to focus on long after this series is over. And so I encourage you to continue to think about how you can improve upon your overall health and wellness, and do so in a great way. So thank you again for joining us, and take care.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.